Our next session, Climate Smart is Community Smart. Please welcome our moderator, Yasmina Zaidman, Chief of Development and Partnerships, Acumen.
Thank you so much, and welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. Action Speaks is about one idea. Action speaks louder than words. Many of the solutions to address climate change are already here, and by giving them a voice, we can inspire others and scale climate action that lasts. I'm Yasmina, really excited to be here. It is such a privilege to be here with all of you and to be at this event that is organized by our partners and our friends at INCA, the B Team, and the World Economic Forum. I'm here representing Acumen. We were founded 20 years ago with the radical idea that business, when cultivated with moral imagination, can break the cycle of poverty. We invest in transformational companies, we build sustainable markets, and we prepare leaders with the tools that they need to create a more just and inclusive future. Many of these leaders are working at the intersection of poverty and climate. So today's discussion is at the core of our values and our goals. Before I jump in, I would love to just get a sense of the room. Who in the room today sees themselves as an entrepreneur? If you could raise your hand. Great. Who here sees themselves as an investor? Great to have investors. How about a philanthropist? Wonderful. And then finally, who's here representing a corporation or a corporate foundation? Incredible. So what we're seeing here is this diverse group of stakeholders, and I'm sure there's others that don't fit neatly into any of those categories, but that is what we need to drive action on climate change today. A large missing piece in the climate narrative is agency and organizing. Who owns, decides, and builds trust and social capital to determine how we solve these challenges related to climate? When we design climate action with communities at the heart of the process, we can build the trust and the resilience that makes climate solutions scalable, investable, and enduring. You could see this in 3 examples. In India, where the energy transition is becoming a pathway for prosperity and empowerment of women, we work with a company called S4S Technologies, which is a women-founded company that partners with rural women in India through solar-powered dryers to increase their income and reduce agricultural food waste. They sell solar dryers to female micro-entrepreneurs, and they also source fruits and vegetables from smallholder farmers that would have gone to waste. So they're increasing incomes for farmers, dramatically increasing women's income for about 4,000 women, and they're reducing carbon from the entire process. Because by drying these products, reducing waste, reducing emissions, even the transportation and logistics is 80% less burdensome on climate. This is a solution that only works because they are partnering with women, with the farmers. And they see that as core to their model, centering on those stakeholders rather than just the customers that buy products from them. Here in the US, we see so much potential with the Inflation Reduction Act, which unlocked huge amounts of capital, which is now at risk. But all the projects that were identified also were at risk because of the challenges around governance, around community engagement, around regulatory environments that can limit progress on these ambitious projects. So whether you're in a developed economy or a developing economy, the need to build trust, to engage communities, to see all of these stakeholders as part of the process is imperative if we really want to see the impact. So across these stories, the lesson is the same. When people share ownership, when transparent governance builds trust, and when social benefit is inseparable from climate and commercial benefit, solutions can scale. So we see business as a driving force for these models, but people remaining important at the center. Future markets will depend on how companies choose to organize, how they share agency, build trust, and align climate action, and that is exactly what we're going to explore today. So I'm going to now sit, and I'm excited to introduce our 3 panelists. We're going to really jump into their stories, their work, how they're embedding communities into the work that they do. So I'm thrilled to have with us Åsa Skogström-Felt, who's the Managing Director for IKEA Social Entrepreneurship, Waishali Nigam-Sinha, who's the co-founder of Renew and the chair of Renew Foundation, and Renata Piazon, who is the Executive Director of Instituto Arapiao. So rather than doing a big intro of your orgs, I'd love you to weave the story of the work you do into our questions, because we have not a ton of time, but some really important stories to share. So I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to start with the topic of agency and impact. And I'll go and ask each of you the same question. Why does community agency matter in climate action? And can you share a story where including local communities made climate solutions more effective and enduring? Let's start with you.
Thank you, Yasmina. At IKEA Social Entrepreneurship, we support about 100 social entrepreneurs across the world every year. And we focus on the intersection between people and the planet. And we also see that people are, of course, the solution to this behavior change that we need to see in the world. And the vulnerable groups and the vulnerable communities are the ones that get affected the most by climate change. And so we see in many of our partnerships a lot of work going on to find out circular solutions. And that creates very hands-on ways of reducing waste, as you were into, using resources in a more with a more scarcity mindset, engaging people in understanding why different types of behavior drives different challenges for the planet, and so forth. So by us investing in the circular economy through social entrepreneurs, we can also learn new ways of working for ourselves.
Amazing. How about for you, Waishali?
Yeah, so just a little bit about us. I'm a co-founder of a renewable energy company. And what that means is we go to areas which are in the back of beyond India and set up wind farms and solar farms. And while doing that is great, we are helping India transition from coal to green. But what's most impactful is to see that when we are taking away electricity from certain neighborhoods where people living in those communities are actually being impacted by climate change, the most difficult question is, what do you do for them? And how do you do this in a way where they own their journey, right? And so the lens with which you engage with them is very important. And I've seen that once we engage with women, so what we do is we work with women and youth to ensure that we are engaging women in this whole climate journey, which is there. There are a lot of jobs and opportunities. And we are sensitizing youth to ensure they understand what they're going through with respect to climate change issues like the drought and the heat and the water scarcity, and really sensitizing that it's they who have to do something about it and they have to ask for their future. So, and we felt that if there is agency amongst these stakeholders, how they get engaged goes beyond just jobs, goes beyond, it really engages a village, literally speaking.
Yeah.
And so that's very impactful.
I love that. And I think it's, even the idea that this will create inclusion opportunities, sometimes there needs to be a bridge built for those opportunities to be realized. So it's great that you're doing that and going further to really enable them to be advocates and ambassadors for this work. How about over to you, Renata, to hear about the work that you've been doing and how it connects to communities?
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here in a women's panel, such powerful women's. And I'm the CEO of Arapiao. Arapiao is a Brazilian foundation. We have been funding climate for the last 17 years. And it's interesting because one of our most successful projects is not related to climate, because we just decided to be flexible and to deep listening those communities living in the Amazon region. And I'm talking about indigenous communities, Black communities, riverine communities. We have 90,000 communities, more than 1 million people there. And when we asked what is the need from a climate philanthropist, they said to us, we need connectivity. And for us, it took a while for us to understand why we would fund connectivity when we're funding climate. But then, if you fund connectivity, then you're providing access to health, access to distance education, and then ways for them to protect the territory, and for the youth also movement to stay in the territory and then protect the territory. We have deforestation rates in Brazil, it's only 1% in indigenous land. So we need them to stay there. So I think I just brought this example because I think it's a very interesting example of how philanthropy can act. And this is an example of a project where they are leading the governance, they veto where they receive fund, where they don't receive fund. So they basically decide everything, and it's now a huge network in Brazil. So it's more than just providing the connectivity, it's how you have access to this network through the connectivity or through the funds you provide to those communities. So I think that's a very interesting example to share.
And I love just bringing up that theme of listening, right? And I think it's easy to sort of just have this sense of what is needed, what will add value, but to actually go in with that openness to listening and sometimes being surprised by what you hear. So one of the themes that I've already been hearing is around social entrepreneurship. And obviously that's really an important part of IKEA's social entrepreneurship's work. But in engaging with communities, engaging with young people, people who've been excluded, entrepreneurship often is a path for development. So I'm curious how each of you think about entrepreneurship specifically and the idea of scale. Where do you see the opportunity to support social enterprises, not only the ones that can scale, but also those that have real deep impact at the local level? So maybe we'll go the reverse order, and I'll come back to you, Renata. Where are you seeing entrepreneurship play a role in the work that you do?
I think scale, in our view, is many smalls. So scale not necessarily is like a huge corporation, but it's like funding many small cases and then moving the needle. We have a great example with cocoa agroforestry systems in Brazil, where we have 70,000 smallholder farmers producing cocoa in agroforestry systems and restoration in Brazil. And we have been funding them for the last 10 years. Now we reached 2,500 communities and smallholders. But then to scale those many smalls, we need to connect with public policy. So we need to assure that they will access PRONAF, which is the main policy in Brazil to access credit for smallholders with technical assistance for them to thrive. So I think the role of philanthropy here is to prove the concept, and we are being quite successful with like reaching 2,500, but then to scale to 7,000, we need connections with public sector and connections with the private sector for sure. So I think there's no one silver bullet. There's always, like for complex problems, we often say there's a simple, quick, fast, but wrong solution. So we need to invest in collective impact and in coordinating solutions with the private sector, philanthropy, and public sector. And we have been fostering those blended finance mechanisms with smallholders, with cocoa agroforestry systems, and we've been quite successful.
That's wonderful. I mean, I think it's also recognizing that every farmer, in a way, is an entrepreneur. They have to manage their own resources to be successful. And this theme that has come up today, but also throughout this week, is around how do you really blend the different kinds of capital in a way that can make sense. So you've made a great case for philanthropy, and we'll touch a little bit on the role of the private sector in a moment. But I wanted to ask each of you to also talk about how do you see social entrepreneurs playing a part in the kind of work that you're doing, and also as a bridge to communities. So maybe we'll start with you, Vaishali.
Sure, no, absolutely. And so just to kind of talk about, just philosophically on the scaling part of it, I think it's all right for corporates to talk about scaling, and that's okay. There's a business case for it. But I feel when you're doing work which relates to social impact, right? It's really about the issue you're addressing. And it could be a small issue, but you need to be able to have an impact in that area. So one of the examples which I talked about a little bit earlier is on the salt pan workers. Now that's a small set of women who work in the Ran of Kutch in Gujarat, the western part of our country, and it's a very difficult job to do. It really brutally impacts your health. And most of these people who are working there are women. And I don't want to get into the really gory impact it has on their lives. So if you can address their future by doing something which addresses their lives with respect to their income. So just to give you an example, a salt pan worker makes about, not a full year employment, it's an employment, they get employed for about half a year. they make $120 and just absorb that in 6 months. And our program, which is taking them out of there, reskilling them to become solar technician, helps them make $120 and more every month throughout the year.
Yeah.
And so we have young girls, and it's a generational employment. So just to quickly wrap up, that it's really important for us to see social entrepreneurship is about social impact. And having said what I'm saying philosophically, we impact about 1.7 million lives, which is an assured number, which went into our integrated report. We've been able to impact a significant amount of lives. But when it comes to social enterprise and work, we need to work in areas which require attention and then take the risk, program design, implement, and then work with partners, whether it's capital, whether it is civil society, other corporates, to scale wherever it's required.
Yeah.
So that's
So scaling at the right level of scale to have the impact that you need to have, not scale for its own sake.
correct.
Also, what are you seeing in terms of the potential for social enterprises to scale?
I think this is a very interesting discussion overall, and sometimes I believe that when we talk about social entrepreneurship, we get very stuck in how you see entrepreneurship traditionally. But for me, a social entrepreneur is someone who, as you said, they put the challenge in the center and then they try to solve this challenge in an inclusive manner. And the scaling journey doesn't necessarily have to be to build an organization. So we see in our portfolio over 250 social entrepreneurs that we have supported. It ranges from creating an organization that employs and creates jobs, but there are also many other models where making your solution open source and engage others, sharing the knowledge to make sure that this challenge can go away in bigger context, and going all the way towards systems change. So in one of our latest programs where we work, we have actually 10 social entrepreneurs that work together on one question. And the reason was that they were all finding that they could only come to a certain point, but then the challenge was in the system. And they were too small to one by one address that, but as a cohort, and then we included companies, policymakers, to your point, and institutions to really focus on what is the intervention we can do with an entrepreneurial mindset to shift and get into a more positive future.
Amazing. I'm thinking about ways we could work together to help those cohorts of entrepreneurs to really amplify their voices and their impact really as leaders. So this is going to be a question for the representatives of corporations, so Vaishali and to Alsa. So what we're talking about in terms of the impact that these kinds of innovators and local communities and entrepreneurs can have is clear, creating livelihoods, creating new advocates, new understanding of the role they can play in climate change. But I'm curious, what is the value for a corporation of supporting this work beyond the positive social impact? How do you see this bringing value? You've also already mentioned the value of learning, but I would love to hear examples, and particularly for those corporate representatives in the room, because everyone's looking for the business case. Where do you see examples of how companies can really benefit from a value accretion perspective from this kind of work with the social enterprises and with local communities? You can start.
Well, I can take two examples. So for IKEA, we have a vision of becoming circular, and who knows exactly what the circular world looks like. I think we don't have a blueprint. So we need to test and try. And social entrepreneurs are great innovators and great change makers that can be speedboats that we learn from. So for us, it's a big learning experience, and we connect our coworkers around the world with social entrepreneurs as coaches, mentors, experts, but actually the value goes equally. When they come back into their reality, they have totally new mindset, new knowledge, and also a perspective on systems change. But that being said, of course, there are business opportunities as well. So for instance, want to have all our products being either from renewable or recycled material, but there is not enough recycled material. So waste management is a sector that we are heavily engaged in and have invested in many social entrepreneurs, all the way from the waste pickers, the waste workers, and what have you, aggregating and shredding and cleaning and so forth. That is indirect supporting our business to be able to transform.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful example. I mean, we've seen a lot of our social enterprises taking that issue on with the social lens, right? Everyone, the visibility of the waste challenge in places where there isn't strong infrastructure is very prominent, but behind the scenes, the people who are involved in that work are some of the most vulnerable and exploited. And so to find businesses that center on the dignity, the safety, the livelihoods of those people, I think is really powerful. And as you said, can solve an important business challenge, but in a way that doesn't do that at the expense of these vulnerable people. So how about for Renew? How are you seeing the work that you've done to support communities and local entrepreneurs coming back to add value to your company?
Yeah, so I've talked a little bit about the work we are doing, and we're really doing it from our heart. But just to answer your question, for the business case, I'll give you a few examples. So, once especially the areas we work in, as I said, they're back of beyond India, and clean energy can be political, as we've seen nowadays globally, quite political, and at a subnational level. While in India, we have an unbelievable trajectory for clean energy growth and ambition, which is being led by our Prime Minister, and then private sector players like ours, and global capital is really funding it, which is amazing. But sometimes at the subnational level, when you have a change in government, etc., things are not stable. And day of no work costs us millions of dollars.
Oh, wow.
And when you have the community with you, it's just a very easy way to ensure that despite anything, they are with you. They stand by your side and they go to work, they get business going and running, and they can be a very, very powerful stakeholder in the outside, but really well, right in the heart of your business. So that is super powerful. And then if I look at the kind of work we are doing, I think when you're in business, there is no way in which, you think about social impact, etc. But as a business person, I correlate what I do with the business angle as well. So we're working with women because we really want to run a company which is inclusive and our goal is to have 30% women at the workplace. I'm not very proud of that, but in the industry, the average is around 11 or 12%. So getting to 30% is ambitious by 2030. And for that, we really need to get women engaged. So we work with women across the country in areas which are not very remunerative to bring them in the mainstream and ensure that India has an inclusive transition. And of course, for youth, India has an issue with respect to employment and engaging the youth and providing them an opportunity to look at this sector feeds into our business case. I'll tell you why. Once you engage a woman, you're not engaging a woman, you're really engaging the entire ecosystem. And the sector is growing a lot in India. There's a lot of attrition. But when there's a young kid who's grown up, and the life cycle of our assets is about 25 years. So when they grow up seeing this whole relationship from mother to father and to their own value added of STEM education, they will not leave you for an additional $1 or $100 or whatever the case may be. They will be yours, with you, with full agency, marching alongside you step by step.
That's wonderful, and I think it's hopefully a model that others will replicate. I wanted to come to you, Renata, with a question. As we think about all these shifts in the funding landscape, which is a big topic, and we see examples of the private sector really stepping up to support innovation and community engagement, I'd love to hear how you think about, what does the future look like, maybe in an ideal sense, as we see traditional supporters of community development pulling away, right? Large government funders not always playing their role. And what do you think can really be the catalyst in terms of bringing the capital that's needed? It sounds like you're working with different kinds of capital. So paint a picture for us of what that can look like, even if it's aspirational, to get the right capital moving to solve these problems.
It's interesting because one of the reasons we came for Climate Week was because of a request of President of COP30 for us to showcase Brazil as a hub for climate solutions. And then we gathered all these mature solutions and the solutions that are still on the way, but that need philanthropic capital, investment capital, private capital, and then blended finance mechanisms to scale. And then we launched that this week. And one of the solutions that is there is restoration. Brazil is a hub for restoration at scale. It's one of the best places in the world to do it. And what we realized as a philanthropy is that we needed to support a pre-competitive movement of the private sector to be as successful as the private sector was in Brazil with exotic species. We had a lot of investments in science, technology, and innovation with Embrapa and with many investments also from the government and subsidies to put that in place. And now we need that at scale for native restoration. So I think sometimes the role of philanthropy is to facilitate this process of engagement of this private sector that is rising in Brazil, and then it's to be scaled. And there's a lot to be shared on operational level, on advocacy strategies, on how to unlock guarantees with Brazil's National Development Bank. So I think the future is more collective. So when I envision the future is like a future where not each philanthropy has its theory of change, and then we have a collective theory of change where we're all aiming to the same goal, because I think that the challenge is so complex, and there's no way for us to do it otherwise.
Yeah, I love that. And you think about what that could mean within each sector, but then when you bring them together. And this week, there's been so many great conversations about what it would look like to blend different kinds of capital, to bring different stakeholders together. But there's like some friction in the system, right? It doesn't just happen by itself. And so the idea that philanthropy can help create that glue to bring people together, to create spaces like this, I think is a catalyst for collaboration itself. Because just because it makes sense on paper doesn't mean that everything will just fall in place. There's a lot of work that goes into that effort to bring people together in the right ways, to structure the capital in the right ways. So it's exciting to hear that you've taken that on. Clearly, the possibilities are endless, even as people now sometimes feel a sense of scarcity about capital or anxiety about policy. The reality is the capital does exist. The innovations do exist. So for each of you, as we're sort of coming to the tail end of this session, what do you see as some of the most critical needs, maybe for people in this room to think about and take away, to unlock all that possibility? Just a few things that you want people to focus on as we move into this next chapter, which is one that could be more challenging, but has to also be the one with the most urgency to solve these problems. So maybe we'll start with you. What do we need to go forward?
I think we need to look, for instance, at social innovation in the same way as we look at R&D. It's not philanthropy, it's innovation, and we need to fund it with mixing capital, but really it's about how we address it from a mindset perspective. And yes, blended capital is needed, and I do think that we, who are working with different types of funding, could come together in a more easy way for the entrepreneurs, so they don't have to look for money all the time, but there is a pathway. And what we have learned over these years is, of course, that social impact takes time. You need to stay at it. You need to see 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. That's how long it will take.
I love that. I think that kind of patience and long-term view is so needed. Vaishali, what do you see as some of the critical things to focus on as we go into this next phase of urgency?
I think the most important thing to focus on is conviction, to believe in what you're doing despite the noise around you, which may not endorse that. I think we've done enough over the last few years to establish that the impact of climate is for real. And so it's just my call out to all the people here that if you believe in what you're doing, just keep marching ahead, because nothing can stop you if that's the case. And I think just keeping up with the dynamic environment we are in, whether it is the government or the regulators, we need to. So let me give you an example. For example, in India, we have a CSR program, and climate is not necessarily a part of it right now. So those minor tweaks, as we march ahead, are important for us to keep presenting to regulators and government and working with them collaboratively. And above all, I think my ask is that we can't do anything alone. We have to partner and not be insular, like it's not about us, our company. It's really about us, our company, other companies, our country, other countries, and because this is about the world working together.
Yeah.
And let's hope that happens.
I love that. And I love just the confidence of knowing that these systems, even when they feel that they're limiting or constraining, can be changed. And that attitude is the way that it changes. And to you, Renata, what do you see?
We don't have much time, but two things for now. If you're not going to COP30, just go. It's going to be an amazing moment. It's such an important moment for Brazil, and we need international community to be there. And local communities are going to be massively in the streets and involved in everything that's happening. And second, if you're not funding the Global South, just start doing now, because we are the ones leading the way.
Absolutely, and doing it in places where the biggest impact is being felt and the opportunities are there. So we are at time, and I just have to say it's been such an honor to be on this panel with the three of you that really are building different kinds of systems that are changing what people think is possible, but that you're doing it in a way that puts communities at the center. And I think it's not an exaggeration to say that they are so often forgotten. And in all these conversations, something I think everyone here can ask of themselves and in the circles that they're in, what are we doing to include vulnerable people? What are we doing to listen? Because what we're hearing on this panel is that listening has created huge value and huge opportunity and credibility to do the work that you each do, whether it's philanthropic or business-oriented. To center communities is not a liability, it is a strength and an asset. So that is what we're here to do today, to elevate what's working, to spread the word. Thank you all for being a part of it, and thank each of you for the incredible work that you do.
Thank you.